All right, guys, back here on Southeastern 16 with Chase Robinson talking SEC football this offseason. South Carolina, Chase, another team to discuss here in the dog days of May in SEC football. As we talk about the Gamecocks, some of the teams we talked about this offseason were like, all right, can they have the big turnaround, right? We mentioned, can Auburn have the breakthrough? Can Brent Venables turn things around at Oklahoma? South Carolina's like, hey, we're not turning anything around. We just want to keep this thing going, keep going in the direction we've already been going in. 9-4 last season, we know. It's just such a huge year for South Carolina. Certainly, the finish they had a remarkable, sort of finish in terms of building that momentum as they now come into this next season. And as you look at the roster, Chase, we know LaNorris Sellers is going to be the guy that gets all the attention. But just overall thoughts on maybe for South Carolina fans as they go into this next season, being projected out there as probably a top 12 to 15 team, I would say. When you look at some of the early rankings and such out there, what do you think is sort of that baseline for the expectations for the South Carolina team?
I mean, I think we should expect good things out of South Carolina again. And I say again, I don't necessarily think we expected a
Right.
lot of big
Yeah.
things last year.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I'll tell you, I didn't. It took me a few weeks last season to really say, okay, maybe we should, pay attention to this. I remember listening to Shane Beamer at SEC Media Days. He went on and on and on and on before he took a question at Media Days in his big press conference. And he was just talking about this team and how special they are. And I thought, what is this guy doing? Just going on and on. But then as we moved through the season, I kept thinking about that. Like, coaches know things, coaches know what they see. Like, he obviously saw something special in this team that nobody else had. And so we should take what we saw last year and I think expect that from South Carolina. I don't think it's a one and done thing. Yes, they lost some talented players, but I think that they'll continue to be up there. And I think when LaNorris Sellers is on the field, he's a game changer. He's going to change the way the game goes for South Carolina, especially as we saw him later on in the season get really comfortable running the ball, get comfortable with these downfield passes, get comfortable throwing into traffic, things that he wasn't really settled into at the beginning of the year. We saw him get really comfortable with, in October and November. And so I think we can expect him to be that kind of quarterback all season long because he has a season under his belt. He's played in some big moments and some big games and did some really big things. And so I think LaNorris Sellers is that kind of running back now. And look, I think the receiver room is looking good. They've got Mazeo Bennett, Nick Harbor, Jared Brown all back, Vendravius Jacobs. They've got some good freshmen in there. So I think that they've got some guys who have played meaningful snaps together. They've played a lot of football together offensively. And so, and the offensive line as well, those guys have been part of the team. So I think the cohesiveness should be there because a lot of these guys have played together. Running back, question mark, but everywhere else, I feel like it's a pretty collective unit.
Yeah, with Sellers currently, and these seemingly fly around all the time in terms of where they stand. They could be changing by the day, but currently per FanDuel has the 9th best odds for the Heisman Trophy next season, which I don't think, again, is probably a huge surprise. Arch Manning leads the way. That's also not a surprise based on that. Some other SEC guys you would expect in there, whether it's Garrett Nussmeier, DJ Lagway's in there, and so forth. Almost said Carson Beck, but I'm like, whoops, no longer in the SEC there. Former SEC guys we know, but he's kind of in that same range. But yeah, so I think, from that standpoint, like you said, I think what stands out with him, you look at the game logs from last year, obviously you just see that progression that he made, as the season went along, and that was a big reason why they had the big streak that they had to win, 6 games in a row there after that close loss at Alabama. And so, yes, like when we look at just the development aspect from him, I think that that's clearly going to be there. But like you said, it is a team too. If you just look at, you sort of compare the charts and you see some of these guys that maybe, it's an added year of experience now. You add one more year, they go from this to this, and it's just that extra off season of development. You've got quite a few of those guys. I think when you look at it on this South Carolina roster, obviously offensively that's going to be more so the case. You've got a few more transfer really loaded up, as we'll talk about defensively with transfers. But I think that's clearly what stands out the most is big development offseason for some of the younger guys that are about to maybe step into some expanded roles, but also some of that chemistry is already built in with some guys who, as you mentioned earlier, played together a bit for this team.
Yeah, and I think of Nick Harbor being one of those guys, wide receiver. Last year, he was trying to get in the Olympics for track and was a national track athlete, and so missed spring football, missed some things in the summer because he was doing track events. He's not doing track this year, and so he had spring. He's having a full summer with South Carolina football. And we didn't really see him come on for a while last football season. Like he was on the field, but he wasn't he wasn't as involved as you would have liked him to been. And so a guy like him to have a full off season as a football player, I think will help, especially timing and things with LaNorris Sellers. So yeah, development's huge. And I think of development, especially with these wide receivers, because but they were good last year, but I think that they're trying to get a notch better and a notch above what they were offensively there. And so yeah, development is key, not only with quarterback, but with the whole team. And I think Shane Beamer has done a nice job of collecting these guys and keeping them there, and adding Mike Shula as the offensive coordinator, of course, former Alabama head coach. He was a quarterback at Alabama, and so he understands as the offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach kind of where LaNorris Sellers needs to go, more of the quarterback, technique and thing like that Mike Shula is able to work with him on, and a very veteran offensive coordinator there at South Carolina.
You talked to Chris Clark several weeks ago, and I think one of the topics, and we can kind of expand on this a little bit, was just the difference that we're going to see on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's clearly something with South Carolina too.
Oh yeah, and that defense was so good last year. They were so much fun to watch, especially those guys on the edges. Dylan Stewart, Kyle Kennard. Those guys were fantastic. Imanori, they're on defense. So there were some big names, some big stars on the field last year defensively for South Carolina. And so you look at the defense this year, like, well, I don't see any big names. And I think they will be. Like, I think he's gone out. He's got some guys there on the edge that will be good. He's got some transfers that he's brought in to work on each side, and so yeah, there's going to be different names, new names to learn. But I think that they'll still be good defensively. It's just kind of waiting to see now these guys gel, these guys work together, because it's going to be 6-7 transfers probably starting on their first game against Virginia Tech. And so it's going to take some time, I feel like, for us to really grasp this defense. There's just going to be a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way. Like you said, it's just anytime you replace guys like that, doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to have the skill. It's just you're going to have more questions how to replace certain guys like the ones you mentioned that are exiting the roster. And so I'm curious, as of right now, FanDuel has South Carolina's, and this is something that we'll go into this offseason a bit more. And our guys, Brian Edwards and Jay Greason, will do their look at it from a sort of a gambling aspect. 7.5 is the over/under right now for the win total for South Carolina heading into this season, and I think that's where it does become a little bit fascinating when you look at this team. Because, like you said, it was one that sort of emerged with just an unreal finish last year to get to 9 wins, and now you kind of look at the setting. They start against Virginia Tech, as you noted. That's on August 31st in Atlanta. That's kind of one of those games that can sort of change things. Then you just keep kind of going down the list, though. They're going to play 3 of their next 4 at home. Actually, here's a trivia note for you, Chase. They'll play every game in Columbia in September. Now, one of those Columbias is Columbia, Missouri, but they will play every game in Columbia in September. 3 of the 4 at home: South Carolina State, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, at Missouri. But that I think is kind of something to look at, because we know too, right? You're gonna have road games at LSU, at Ole Miss, at Texas A&M. Other home games in there against Alabama, Oklahoma, who we think should be improved. You got Coastal Carolina, and then of course the home game against Clemson, who will certainly have very high expectations this season. So yeah, I think it's kind of a fascinating number to set for South Carolina, because like we said, it's, can you keep that same momentum going after a strong finish? And I think they should have a great chance to do that. Maybe before the schedule gets a bit SEC, I guess you could say, there in mid-October.
Yeah, and I think they can definitely handle it, but you want to set the tone. If you're South Carolina, because that loss to LSU early hurt them last year, you want to set the tone early, start off with your foot on the gas this year for South Carolina.
Yep, no doubt about it. But there you go, some thoughts on the Gamecocks. And again, we'll certainly expand more on it, but wanted to talk mostly about expectations for the development of LaNorris Sellers and whether this team can, again, sort of keep that momentum going. And you guys let us know, South Carolina fans. I know you weighed in on the video that Chase did with Chris. Also, additional thoughts here, maybe about a month later. Where do you stand on this team as we get ready to go into the next couple months and start our really in-depth season previews of these teams? But what are your thoughts on the Gamecocks heading into next season? Let us know in the comments. Do us a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button as well. Turn on your notifications if you want more SEC stuff here this offseason. We appreciate you guys watching as always. We'll talk to you soon at Southeastern 16.